What you're saying is, you're going to take everything I enjoyed about the first film, double all of the good parts, and at the center of it all, it's two divas, instead of just one, mowing down rich people. Everyone move. My show is on.
I'm not playing.
Okay. Brunella, kill the sister.
Not until we bury the body.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today I'm going to be talking about Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, the sequel to the 2019 film Ready or Not. We've got Radio Silence back to direct, Samara Weaving picking up right where she left off, complete with her signature yodel scream.
You gonna baw at me?
Ready or Not 2 serves a double dose of dark comedy, imaginative action, and also manages to unlock a whole new depth through its central relationship of estranged sisterhood on the mend. If for some strange reason you are watching my review of this sequel without knowing what the first film is, in that first film, Samara Weaving played a woman named Grace who was engaged to be married to a man named Alex, who comes from an affluent family. However, that wealth and power have strings attached. Shortly after their wedding, the newlyweds are tasked with playing a game. A card gets drawn, and on that card, the worst possible outcome arises: hide and seek. What Grace doesn't realize when she initially pulls this card and goes and hides is that this means that her new family she's just married into must hunt her down and execute her before the sun rises, and she must fight for her survival. Now, I'm about to spoil that film's ending, so you have until the count of 3 to click off of this video before I say how that story ends. In 3, 2, 1. Grace successfully survives the night, and everyone else in that family does not. Even if some of those family members made it all the way to the sun rising, those scum must face the consequences of losing the game and they explode. It happens by way of ritualistic supernatural magic, and it has great comedic timing. This sequel picks up right where that story left off, of Grace going outside in her bloody dress, exhausted and traumatized. The peelers show up and inquire as to what just transpired, and her response is, in-laws. But things aren't so simple as to be the final girl of one bloody night, because before Grace knows it, she's been snatched up and pulled back into yet another game. But this time, it's her and her estranged sister Faith versus a bunch of evil rich people.
Ugh.
All this you should have been able to ascertain from the film's trailer, but maybe you didn't see the trailer, so consider that your previously on, as well as an opening introduction to this sequel. This is the minimal spoilers section of this video, but after this we will be going into full spoilers. I will let you know first though, so you will have the option to click off before we get into more of those details. The first film had the element of surprise working in its favor, but for me personally, this is the film that's more fun, as well as more meaningful to watch. It's also the most indulgent of the two. The comedy is funnier, the action is more over the top, and the personalities of the foils Grace and Faith must face off against are significantly more entertaining. But there's a whole new emotional weight to this film that the first film did not have, and that's because of this relationship between Grace and Faith. There's been so much care put into developing the relationship and history of these sisters. When it was the first film, it was mostly Samara Weaving on her own. Occasionally she would have interactions with her evil husband that we were pretending isn't going to turn on her eventually, or his brother that she somehow had more chemistry with than her actual husband. But the emotional depths she has with Faith were never achieved with those men, meaning that in the midst of all of this chaos and mayhem, Samara Weaving has a true scene partner to engage with. That's the emotional bedrock and heartbeat of this story. Samara Weaving and Kathryn Newton perform this complicated sisterhood to perfection. Although I would say that this film is largely comedic, the emotional turmoil of what these sisters have been through, why they are estranged from one another, and their struggle to find a way back to each other, wading through all of that baggage in the process, is given the room to be dramatic and serious and earnest. This is a tricky thing to balance with this much comedy and fun, alongside the emotional heartbeat of these two and another part of the story that I'm not going to talk about just yet because of spoilers, but I was so satisfied with how everything ultimately came together. Moreover, as a fan of whodunits, I couldn't help but feel as though this ensemble scratched a similar itch in my brain as a really fun whodunit would. In that genre, there is always at least one death, and that mystery needs to be solved. More specifically, you will have a pool of suspects making up the majority of your film's ensemble, and you need a fair amount of them to be varying degrees of despicable or downright evil, because you have to keep the audience guessing as to who did it. But if you can make them nefarious characters who are also entertaining, you get to laugh along the way while you root for these people's downfall, even if they weren't the ones who did the it of the whodunit. But in the case of Ready or Not 2, we have an ensemble mostly comprised of whos. They're all killers, regardless of whether or not you see them take anyone out in this film. They're enthusiastically benefiting off of an oppressive, violent system which they have sold their souls to be a part of. All for that taste of money and power. Radio Silence have more than proven themselves by now as being a team who can deliver movies that are violent, fun, and for the girls. There's those two films we won't promote anymore because we support Melissa Barrera, Abigail, starring Melissa Barrera, and now we also have Ready or Not 1 and 2. That's quite the track record of fun times on the big screen with iconic leading ladies. Plenty of laughs to be had. And this film does feel like a joyful creation for the girls who loved Ready or Not 1 and Abigail, because you have Samara Weaving back to do all of the things we loved to see her do in the first film, and we also have Kathryn Newton and Kevin Durand from Abigail. I wouldn't say that the plot is necessarily hard to predict, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun I was having and how compelling I found this relationship between Grace and Faith, and how dialed in Radio Silence seemed to be with really knowing who their most enthusiastic audience is. It's the girls. And for anyone who's new here, when I say the girls, capital T, capital G, that's not a gender thing, it's a vibe thing. This is also an excellent ensemble of villains, whom I will be saying a bit more about, but I want to do that in the spoiler section just so that I can keep things vague for the people who want to have an overview of what my feedback is of the film without knowing too many specifics.
So it begins.
Oh, man.
But now we can talk about spoilers. Samara Weaving, the actor that you are, and maybe more people besides just us, the girls, will finally start to give you the credit that you deserve. She has such a beautifully expressive face. For as much spectacle as this film offers, I need to emphasize to you that Samara is what makes the dramatic stakes real. She is why you feel the palpable fear, despair, and anguish of these circumstances. When she and Faith get kidnapped and brought to yet another rich person's mansion, compound, some piece of property that needs to be swiftly expropriated, and she is crying, she is distraught, and you know what? I believe her. There can often be this built-in immunity among the movie viewing audience of Hollywood films. There's this expectation that the protagonist will definitely be fine, even if the genre is a violent one, like horror or action, or in this case, a fusion of the two. But Samara Weaving makes you feel that the danger is real for Grace. She's brought to the hospital and wakes up handcuffed to her hospital bed because, the peelers think she's a mass murderer or some other sort of dangerous individual they need to apprehend. But this is actually a decent prelude for some surprisingly delightful callouts throughout this film. What do we learn and see throughout this story? That the people who are in charge control everything, including but not limited to the police, the phone company. So why wouldn't Grace be swiftly taken captive after what happened in the previous film? Not because she took out a few people, but because the people she took out were rich. And the peelers only exist to protect the wealthy and their assets. Oops! Did Radio Silence bear witness to the state of the world and infuse a few well-timed callouts in this film? There's a notion floating around on film social media spaces about how this sequel only exists to indulge the fans, and make no mistake, that's definitely part of why this film is so fun to watch. It's an indulgent work of art offering a plethora of entertaining attributes that a film can have. But I think it's worth noting that it's made clear that both Grace and Faith are working class. Faith is a hostess, Grace is a waitress, and the fact that they have the most evil of these evil rich people insult them for their names, Grace and Faith, by calling them Irish Catholics. I didn't know that we'd be drawing a direct correlation between evil rich people and the hatred of Irish Catholics. I mean, where there is smoke, there is fire. But when he said that, well, I knew that I had been summoned. If you spew hatred against my Irish Catholic divas, you will have the day you deserve.
Because we're Fenians.
And to be clear, all jokes aside, they never have Grace or Faith outright say what their heritage is or if they practice any religion. But if you, a turbocharged evil rich person, want to use bigotry against Irish Catholics, I will be claiming that and reversing it to commit to the bit. Because that's what the Irish do, they commit to the bit. Should we talk about this ensemble of evil rich people now? We might as well, right? They're not all from the same family this time, but instead, small clusters of people from a multitude of different families who have all made this deal with the devil. We get to have a really fun, eclectic ensemble of supervillains. East Asian, South Asian, Spanish, and the most supervillainous of all, people who hate Irish Catholics.
Come on, you dirty prod!
And Michael, no, listen.
Well, maybe not kill them, Kathleen, but likely beat them with sticks or something.
Although there's plenty that could be said about each of these different villainous families present to participate in this new match of hide-and-go-seek, such as Varun Saranga's comedic line delivery, Kevin Durant's really fun cameo, the absolutely hilarious pepper spray fight between Grace and Francesca. Of course, the most interesting villains to talk about amongst this ensemble are the Danforths. They were the family who held the most powerful seat in this nefarious group, and when Grace won her game of hide-and-seek, she unknowingly activated a clause that made it to where that most powerful seat is now up for grabs. They must all play hide-and-seek once more, and this time the winner will take that seat. Now, because of the way the rules work, the most senior member of each family, as in the one with the controlling power over things, is the one that must enter the game. But for the Danforths, that is their elderly patriarch, Chester Danforth, played in a cameo performance by famed horror director David Cronenberg. By his orders, his twin children, Ursula and Titus, smother him, so that following the line of succession, the two of them will be able to enter the game together, whereas each of the other families will only be able to enter one family member at a time. It's a ruthless, horrific way to introduce us to these characters, and what I love about that is it shows how truly depraved this way of life is, that of the relentless pursuit and maintaining of ultimate power and fortune. Thematically, it actually reminded me quite a bit of House of Gucci, which, of course, I love. She's here on my wall. In House of Gucci, they made a clear distinction between Maurizio when he was living a humble life, working to wash trucks at Patrizia's father's business when he was disowned by his own family. And he was genuinely happy while doing this. He had the woman he loved, he's playing football with the other workers, and there's a joyful camaraderie to be found here. But as soon as he and Patrizia go back into the Gucci world to attend Uncle Aldo's birthday party, what's more or less the first thing we see? We see rich people playing sports, and what happens? They're vicious, competitive, there is no joy or camaraderie to be found. It's the same thing with Ready or Not too. Grace and Faith, despite all of their struggles in life, of the trauma of being in foster care and having fallen out with one another, when they are thrown into the most horrific circumstances imaginable, they are still desperate to make sure that the other one survives. And that's on what? Working class Irish Catholic divas. But with Ursula and Titus, you can see from the beginning that there are extra red flags where Titus is concerned. He relishes in being able to murder their father. He revels in violently brutalizing Faith to enough of an extent that it was hard to watch. If I see you unironically insulting this film on social media and dismissing it as only being a spectacle, as being something frivolous, that's a red flag to me, because there was nothing in the first film that horrified me as much as the way Titus assaulted Faith. The level of brutality is not there by accident. It is saying something about the type of person he is, and the type of men who strive for, achieve, and maintain the utmost levels of power in this world. The messaging may be enrobed in genre storytelling, so they can claim plausible deniability about whether or not this film has political messaging in it, which, yes, it absolutely does. The Venn diagram of achieving this level of wealth with violent misogyny is what? A circle. And it's not only that there's this total disregard for the sanctity of, well, anything, life, family. It's all secondary to maintaining that power. Your father needs to go if the family is to maintain power. Your sister wants to try to keep you from being the most villainous of all villains because you need to simply be a regular villain. She will be taken out for that. And in rewatching this film, that was the thing that struck me, was that earlier on when the twins are pursuing Grace and Faith in the woods, Ursula is totally in denial that she is doing anything wrong. She believes that this is simply the way that things go. It's the system. She never once questions that, even when she watches her brother nearly beat Faith to death, and he relished in doing so with his bare hands. It was a joy for him to be a sadistic piece of misogynistic garbage. And ultimately, this is why Ursula is doomed, and she sealed her own fate. She didn't want to overthrow this system, she wanted to maintain it. But the only way forward is to burn this whole thing to the ground, and that's why Grace is the one who is victorious. The writing is so much more compelling this time because it's digging into the systems of power. It's not just one woman versus a house of evil rich people. It's the entire structure. It's a network. And they go out of their way to emphasize how Grace does not want to be a part of this just to save her own life, because she doesn't want to have to sell her soul and commit systemic violence onto others. Once she has this ultimate power, she throws it away, because it's inherently evil, and that's not who she is. Whenever they have these movies where a main girl battles a rich foe, and the end is her now having assumed that power for herself, it always gives me the ick. But if you're the main girl and you were offered that ultimate power and you throw that power away because the system itself is inherently evil and there is no way to have that power without harming others, you will be a woman after my own heart. Ready or Not 2. The Invitation. You are both my divas. And the ending is not just about these deeper thematic elements that, of course, I love to dig into. It gives you all of the aesthetics and bombastic elements that we, the girls, want to see. Samara's look as the bride, 11 out of 10. The blood explosions, the way she ends Titus once and for all, not just for all the broad evil he's done, but also for her sister. It was giving R-rated 10 Things I Hate About You when Bianca beat up Joey at the prom and did so in a dress. Good for her. Add Ready or Not 2 to the good for her lists, as well as the Revolution watch lists. Final note, since I haven't mentioned it thus far, Elijah Wood, what a fun role for him to play. The fact that he just gets to be in his fancy outfits, boss everyone around, and bear witness to the absolute mayhem. The way that he looked at Grace after she had bested everyone, he wasn't even upset. This diva just put on a show the likes of which he will never forget. He enjoyed the entertainment. Ready or Not 2 was so fun that I went to another city to watch it at a press screening, and then I rewatched it at home through my press screener, and I've also already booked my ticket to watch it again at the cinema, because even if I've already seen a film through an early press screening, if the film is something that makes me go, oh, I absolutely need more films like these to be made, I try to find time to go support it at the cinema at least once. Also, why else would I pay for a monthly movie pass? And this gave me so much to enjoy. It delivered a multitude of entertaining, emotionally compelling, and thematically engaging qualities that were all worthy of praise. Dark comedy, production value, sisterhood, creative action, and two working-class divas mowing down the most wealthy and powerful people in the world. A movie for me, truly. This was tailor-made for me. Someone had to burn it all down, and you did exactly that, ladies. Out of all the 2026 feature films I've seen this year, there are 3 that I rate very clearly above the rest. And this is one of them. Go see this, watch Ready or Not 1, Abigail, and watch Lisa Frankenstein, because Kathryn Newton was the star of that, and that's another one of my favorites.